Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC TV show podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network Group. I am your host, Priscilla Welch. Welcome to a brand new week. Again, happy Thanksgiving to you all. Happy holidays. I have some breaking news for you all, and stay tuned to the end of the show for the latest news on Alex Trebek from the famous TV show Jeopardy, only here on GSMC TV show podcast. But of course, tonight I would like to start off with a Wipeout on Wipeout. So unfortunately, there was actually a recent death on the famous TV show that's specifically for people that have kind of like athletic, fit bodies who love to do obstacle courses on that TV show. And I remember when this show actually first aired, and everyone was pretty excited because there was really not another show like it, because you can finally see come to life. If you ever been to one of those places where they have like obstacle courses, like where they have like the big trampolines and everything and trapezes, well, yeah, this was a different way where we can actually see it on national television. So the incident actually occurred Wednesday on November 18th, and Endemol Shine North America, they are the producers of the show. And they actually said since this death has occurred, they will actually pause production and will actually resume after Thanksgiving. So unfortunately, this occurred, and it sucks because when usually contestants go on this TV show, they usually don't expect, to die. And he actually died while filming, while he was on the show. And then a few hours later, he actually died after he was rushed to the hospital. And right now, they still don't have any confirmation in any news. They don't want to release specific information on this young gentleman's name and, really like how the death happened, like full detailed story. So again, the TV show is literally like people who kind of are like athletic, they have a fit body, and they go through these crazy courses, and sometimes water is involved, sometimes climbing up on high ropes, like literally having to run on like these big athletic, they're usually like huge and round, like a row of things. And sometimes you get bumped down, sometimes you have to start back up, and usually you'll hit like a buzzer, or you'll try to get to like at least the top of the obstacle course when everything is all done. So a little bit about the show. So Wipeout is actually an American television game, okay? So it always has contestants every season, and it's literally the world's largest obstacle course. That's like its nickname for it. But it actually originally aired on ABC first, and then it first premiered June 24, 2008. Of course, the lovely year that we had President Obama, just saying. And then it went all the way till September 7, 2014. But in 2020, it was actually rebooted, so just recently on TBS. And we had John Cena, Nicole Byer, and Camille Kostek as hosts. And the original host was actually Jill Wagner. She's an actress, and she was actually the one that you would always see like interviewing the contestants like before or after. And it was a really entertaining show because a lot of times these contestants were like from armed services, or they had like a crazy like backstory that you could kind of connect it with them in order to kind of root for them basically, because you really wanted them to win. So it is unfortunate that this young man did actually die while, of course, filming. I can only understand the trauma because the show has been on for years. But apparently, this is not the first time that someone that was on the show has actually passed away. There was actually another 33-year-old And I'm not sure, of course, what the age is. Like I said, they haven't really put out a lot of details when it comes to the second gentleman that had recently just passed away, like I said, Wednesday the 18th. But his name is actually Tom Spark. He was 33 years old. He actually had a stroke and died 2 weeks after he had left Wipeout for, whatever reason. And I had to do my research because I was like, for a show like this, when there's a lot of dangerous obstacles happening, I wonder if, there's been any other deaths. And then I found, of course, like I said, this case about Tom Spark, who had the stroke. So, of course, he didn't have like that tragic situation like this recent gentleman, but at the same time, this is the second person now. And we don't know, of course, if that's what the case is, like him leaving Wipeout, if that's what caused his stroke. But we do know for sure that this second gentleman that recently just passed away did die, or the cause of death was during the filming. So it's unimaginable. And I want to find out too, as the story follows along. I can get back to you guys on that on another episode. But I definitely want to follow up too to see if they will be giving them any type of compensation or anything like that towards the family in regards to the fact that he risked his life to be on this show. Now, of course, every contestant does get medical examinations. And of course, since the show was rebooted in 2020, unfortunately, through the pandemic, things are a little different. So everyone also had to get COVID-19 testing before they could actually participate on the show, which makes perfect sense because the show usually would host a lot of different people. You would have fans in the crowd, like live audiences that will actually be watching this live, which is very cool. Because, like I said, this is dangerous stunts we were talking about. And these people are like superhumans. I think the next show that they do this should be just called Superhumans. Just because of the fact you have to have that upper body strength. You have to have that core strength, that leg strength for the amount of things that they have to do on these obstacle courses. And then you have to do it under a certain type of timing. Because if you don't hit that timing, the next contestant after you or before you, you have to be able to beat their time. If you cannot beat their time, and it's like, say, down to like the last 3 or the last 5, and if you're at the last timing and everybody else is ahead of you, you're done. That's it. And it's very, very, very competitive. So it's hard because, say you're rooting for more than one person, and then that particular contestant, then you have to finally choose, okay, well, which one is going to get it because of their timing. So, like I said, this is one of those really fast, entertaining TV shows. I actually haven't watched it in years, but when I first watched it, I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is something different. This is something new. And you feel the anticipation when they're literally on top of that course and you're like, come on, man, hang on, hang on. And then you realize, okay, well, I'm not athletic. I'm not in that type of body shape, and not to be stereotypical, because you never know who can do this. You know, you never know someone's strength. It's not because of the way they look on the outside, right? They're putting in that work. They're putting in that motivation to continue throughout the entire obstacle course. Now, for me, for example, as I mentioned before earlier in the episode, when it comes to doing things like this, like if you go to like one of those like type of indoor type of like trampoline parks, and I've done this before, and I can even hang on to the bar. Now, I know y'all, okay? When everybody was younger, we all have experienced monkey bars in a park. Wipeout is nothing like this, okay? Which is why I said this is literally a Wipeout on Wipeout, okay? Now, there's so many different levels as well to doing the obstacle course, and like I said, if you don't complete it, you don't win anything. So usually they're kind of competing for money, or they're kind of competing because they want to be heroes. A lot of times they also have like their children that is also on the TV show, which is also very interesting because their kids get to see in action like what their parents get to do. And it's almost as if like their parents are their personal Wonder Woman or Superman. And I love it when the female athletes do this because it just shows like the female can be as well as strong as a man. And I believe there was like a few females like over the years that have won as well. But I'm so glad they rebooted it because I really didn't know that. But unfortunately, in this process of rebooting, they had their really tragic death that occurred. So that is what's trending. That is what's going on right now. So there was a total of 130 episodes and a number of 7 seasons. And of course, the country of origin was United States. And actually, the executive producer for this TV show was Matt Kunitz and Scott Larson. And The actually original host was actually John Henson and John Anderson, while, as I mentioned before, the actress Jill Wagner, she actually was more of a on-location reporter. So whenever, like I said, she was the one that would be interacting with the contestants, like when they're about to complete the obstacle course, or talk to them after, like, oh my gosh, like, you just did an amazing job, that was unbelievable, you did that in so-and-so timing. Then she'll probably talk a little bit with the family, with the kids, and especially if they win, like, that, of course, that's more conversation, more interview, like, how are you feeling right now, like, you just won so-and-so, and, you know, and it continues from there. There have been some situations, I believe, from my memory, that more than a Wipeout contestant can actually go on the show more than once. So, of course, if you keep up with the show over the years, you would start to see a lot of repetition of some of the contestants. And, of course, it moves on to the contestants winning basically around $50,000 for, like, the grand prize. And how it starts off, well, at least from, like, the beginning when the show first started, was they would go through 4 rounds. Then there will be a final winner chosen. The first round will have a total of 24 people, so it could be like 12 women, 12 men. And then they get introduced from like seasons 1 to 3, but for some reason season 4, not all of them were shown. And then they run through like all the different obstacles. And of course the top 12 will continue moving on, because it's like they quickly wipe people out. A lot of people really do not last on this show, especially from the top 24 when they first begin. And the next 2 rounds, they'll do like different obstacles and complex. They really like challenge them. And sometimes, like I said, they have like certain backstories about, this is what I wanted to do. I've always wanted to come on this show. And a lot of them are literally like real life heroes. So we have a lot of people that were like firefighters, from what I remember. They have certain careers that do require them to use their body a lot. And then, of course, we have like a large amount of competitors every year, and they keep trying all these different things. They go more and more and more, and it's just very interesting, you know. And a lot of times you feel bad, because these contestants will go on these different obstacles and get hit hard by like the different things. So like some of the names are the sucker punch, we had the big balls, and that's like the 4 very large red spheres that you will see, spheres in sequence, and they have to like, you know, jump and go to like the next step to get to it. Then you have the sweeper. Oh, I remember sweeper. Sweeper is dangerous, okay, because it's literally like one of those long poles. You'll be standing in like one direction, you have to like kind of like jump over it, and the sweeper is literally sweeping you, because if you don't jump in time to jump over that sweeper, it is knocking you off your feet. And like I said, sometimes there's water like all around these obstacle courses. So when you get knocked off your feet, you're jumping straight into the water. So if you can't swim, I would not advise going on this show. And then we have the dizzy dummy, or we have the treadmill. Okay? Treadmill. Love it. So the emphasis on these obstacles are literally ridiculous, because like I said, you have to watch this live to be entertained. And the way that the gentleman has actually died, the one course that he was on was unfortunately towards the ending. So like he literally finished the entire obstacle course, but then of course died shortly after. And when I say shortly after, it was actually exactly at 7 p.m. Wednesday. Los Angeles County Coroner, the spokeswoman Sarah Delany, said the cause of death has not been released, and the man's name was being withheld until relatives could be notified. And if you would like to confirm my information, you can get all of this from CNN.com as well as NBCnews.com. And this article, this information is actually from the Associated Press, and the recent update was on November 21st, 2020 at 3:58 p.m. I appreciate that they're trying to be as delicate as possible, because of, even though this is a public national television show, you do have to be mindful and respectful of the family that is involved and who suffered from this death. So recently going on Wipeout, and you can actually watch Wipeout on, and I'm talking to, of course, all of you who stream, because of course a lot of us do not use cable television anymore, as I always talk about on my show, but you can actually stream it from TBS for free. And also, if you want to pay, it's iTunes, Amazon Prime Video, Vudu, Google Play Movies and TV, and YouTube. But of course, why not take the free way out, right? We have TBS, because TBS now basically owns the show since they are the ones that rebooted it. So you can watch it for free on there, and you can download the app, okay? And coming up next after the break, I do want to talk about a next TV show, and you're going to actually stream this TV show on Netflix. It is called The Queen's Gambit. So don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss it. Coming up after the break.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. Keith keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Welcome back. Again, thank you so much. If you're now tuning in to the GSMC Podcast Network Group, we just finished discussing about a Wipeout on Wipeout. And again, you can watch the Wipeout TV show on TBS since it was rebooted this year. Rest in peace to the young gentleman that had unfortunately passed away while doing the filming for the TV show. And like I said, it will also resume after Thanksgiving. So right now, I want to get into our next TV show. It is called The Queen's Gambit. And people have recently raved about this TV show because apparently over the years during chess, and this is just a little history behind it, but chess has not always treated women really well. And there's always been a stereotype because chess, of course, is kind of a male-dominated type of game. And when you're playing chess, of course, it's all about your knights, it's about your kings and your queens. Playing chess, you could play chess literally in the real world. It's literally a game of war. Let's look at it that way. This young female on this TV show is actually based on a novel, which I will talk a little bit about soon. But yes, you can watch the first season. It has about 7 episodes so far right now on Netflix. It gives a new meaning to chess. It gives a new meaning to just women in chess in general, and it gives a lot of history. So if you never read the book before, well, you definitely want to watch the TV show. I personally have not watched the TV show yet, but I definitely want to because, first of all, I've always been the type to like checkers maybe over chess. Now, it has a little bit of the same concept, but it's also very different. And you have to have a lot of patience when it comes to chess, and you have to make smart moves. It's all about strategy, right? And this show was actually released October 23rd. Again, it was directed by Scott Frank. There is about 7 episodes so far. And I want to talk to you guys just a little bit about the plot, the cast, and the characters, and the history again behind women playing chess. Now, first of all, the young actress that is starring in the TV show is named Anya Taylor-Joy, and the book is of the same name, The Queen's Gambit. So basically, it's The Queen's Gambit by Walter Tevis. That is the novel, but the show was created by Scott Frank and Alan Scott, and the genre is drama. So you like anything with a lot of drama in it, kind of a slow pace, but has a lot of meaning to it, then this is definitely a TV show for you. As I mentioned, Anya Taylor-Joy, she is the young actress that is starring in the TV show. We have Bill Camp, we have Moses Ingram, Isla Johnston, Christiane Seidel, Rebecca Root, Chloe Puri, Marielle Heller, Harry Melling, Patrick Kennedy, Jacob Fortune Lloyd, Thomas Brody Sangster, Marcin Dorosinski, and we also have Akemji Defornin. I can't really pronounce that name, so bear with me, please. The music for the soundtrack of the TV show is also Carlos Rafael Rivera, and the executive producer is William Horberg, Alan Scott, Scott Frank. Producers are Marcus Logues, Mick Encieto, and cinematography is Steven Meisler. So the show usually runs about 46 to 67 minutes, depending on the episode, and the production company for this TV show is Flickcraft and Wonderful Films. So Anya, she is actually playing Beth Harmon, who is actually an orphan who matures into a competitive young lady fueled by basically the desire to become the greatest chess player of all time and in the world. and she has to mask, basically, so it's kind of a tragic story as well, her addiction for drugs and alcohol, so that way it allows her to actually function properly, especially while playing this game. And Isla Johnston actually plays the young version of Beth, and then Annabeth Kelly as the 5-year-old Beth. It's one of those type of TV shows where we get a lot of flashbacks of what led up to her becoming one of the best chess players of all time. Bill Clamp, he's Mr. Scheibel. He's the custodian at the Methuen Home for Girls, and he's also an experienced chess player. And he basically is the one that teaches Beth how to play and why she falls in love with it. Then we have Moses Ingram as Jolene, and she's actually an orphan as well. She becomes Beth's closest childhood friend. And then Christiane Seidel, she's Helen Deerdorf, and she's the director of the Methuen Home for Girls. Rebecca Root is Miss Lonsdale. Chloe Puri is Alice Harmon, Beth's deceased mother. And we have Mr. Ferguson, the elderly. Another few characters is Mrs. Alma Wheatley, who with her husband Alston adopts Beth as a young teenager and later acts as a manager for Beth's chess career. And that's Marielle Heller. Harry Melling is as Harry Beltic, and he's a champion player. He actually defeats her in her tournament, and they're later friends. Very weird twist. Patrick Kennedy is Alston Wheatley, so he is Alma's husband and Beth's estranged adopted father. Jacob Fortune Lloyd as Towns. He's a fellow chess player for whom Beth develops an unrequited love. That's interesting. Thomas Brody Sangster as Benny Watts. He is a friend and one of Beth's major competitors. And then finally we have Marston, who plays Vasily Borgov, and the current Russian world champion chess player and Beth's fiercest competitor. Yep, 7 episodes so far. I do believe that is the full season because, as you all know, when it comes to Netflix, they usually, when it's like a Netflix original, they usually put out like the first full season. It's not really you waiting for week by week for every episode to come out. So usually, going all the way back from like the 13th century, only really women in chess were the socially important. So they had to be noble, of course. And it's basically more of a European type of art. That's a little bit of history behind it, where there was a lot of times it wasn't too uncommon for games to be between men and women. However, again, it's a theme of European art and the literature 14th through the 18th centuries. Of course, after about the 18th century, well, by the 19th century, the chess world kind of was dominated, like I said, by men. And it wasn't really until like the mid-1980s where it kind of picked back up again, where you would see it very common for women and men to be competing. And the country of Georgia, it actually produced some of the best women chess players of the later 20th century. And it actually included the first female international grandmaster, who was Nona, and she was awarded the title in 1978. And then we have Judith Polgar, who was the first female player to compete in a World Chess Championship in the 2005. And I quote, "She's also the only female player to have defeated the reigning world number 1 in a game when she beat Garry Kasparov in 2002. More recently, Hu Yifan has been the leading female player, winning the BLGM tournament and being rated among the world's top 100 players for several years." And of course, the way chess is played, like we have grandmasters. So right now there are currently 37 female players who hold the title of grandmaster. And then you have international masters, and they all go by alphabetical list. So women did make a lot of history when it comes to chess, which is why I feel like this TV show is very important, because a lot of people do not realize how many women did, because you always hear about the male chess players. And this is kind of a wake-up call. And then we have the list of female players that received official, so FIDE. And this is the International Chess Federation. It's an international organization based in Switzerland that actually connects the various national chess federations and acts as the governing body of international chess competition. And it is usually referred to by its French acronym, and that's FIDE. And FIDE was actually founded in Paris, France on July 20, 1924. And its motto, and it's Latin, so it's called "We Are One People." And recently, and I quote, in 1999, FIDE was recognized by the International Olympic Committee. As of September 2020, there are 195 member federations of FIDE. So that's kind of the role right now for that particular organization when it comes to chess. And its most visible activity is actually organizing the World Chess Championship since 1948. So it's very important. and it has world championships for special groups for women, juniors, seniors, and the disabled. So it did expand and become more diverse over the years, and of course everything always changes. Things cannot always be male dominant for long. And again, I've never really been a good chess player, but it does want me to like sit there and think. It's a way of also educating your mind, because as I stated earlier in the episode, when it comes to chess, it's all about strategy. It's all about thinking. You have to be able to use your brain, and it's all about patience. So there's different things. It's not just a game. There's different things that it actually teaches you in life lessons. So I think it'll be a very interesting show to watch, not just because you maybe love chess, but because you like drama TV shows, because you may also like this actress Anya Taylor-Joy, and it's a female. We need more shows that kind of are starring females and having a female lead who doesn't really need a lot of gentlemen who are also leads. Of course, the cast has a lot of white young males that are also on the show that co-star with her. But we also know some of these actors and actresses, so you may have seen some of their previous objects. As for Anya, she was in actually known for making appearances on the fantasy series Atlantis in 2015. And then she actually had a breakthrough for the film The Witch in 2015. She also was in Split in 2016. You may, recognize her with darker hair. Right now she has red hair in The Queen's Gambit. And I believe she's original blonde, but I'm not sure. And she also was in Glass, of course. Glass was basically like an extension of the film Split and the other two films that connected as well to Glass, since it had all three villains in it. And then we have, she played Lily Reynolds in the black comedy Thoroughbreds in 2017 and Emma Woodhouse in the comedy drama Emma in 2020. So you actually, if you've seen the new movie, The New Mutants, she was the one that had that, or she played Ileana. Oh, she was really good in that too. But it's called Magic, and she was like a Russian superhero, and her character is basically often related to X-Men, but she actually first appeared in the comic book Giant Size X-Men #1 in May 1975. So it was pretty cool. She had some cool powers on The New Mutants. To me, she's actually one of the most powerful ones, because she goes into like this different dimension type of thing in the movie. She actually played the character of the younger sister of the Russian X-Men member Colossus. So if you remember Colossus is also in Deadpool, if you're not too familiar with his character. But she is part, of course, of mutants as everyone else, and has a lot of superhuman abilities. But she had a different natural upbringing compared to Colossus, which is why Colossus was an X-Men. She did work with X-Men sometimes, but she's more sometimes, to me, in my opinion, of an anti-hero. But she is also a very capable sorceress, so that's why her powers are really cool. So yeah, that's just a little bit about The Queen's Gambit. Again, you can watch the first season on Netflix. Again, this is a new meaning for women in chess. Chess, of course, have not treated women all too well because it has been male dominant over the years, but this is definitely a wake-up call for those of you who are not aware of the role that women play in chess and this very highly anticipated competition. So coming up after the break, we're coming up to halfway through our show today. We're going to talk about one of my favorite animes that I literally just finished watching, so I'm just going to kind of give you a review of the show, and it's called Kengan Ashura, and it is a Japanese anime. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Coming up after the break.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back from the break, everyone. So thank you so much again. We are halfway through the show, and I wanted to talk about my next favorite anime. It is violent, it is bloody, it's also educational in many different fighting forms. Very diverse, very exciting, very engrossing. The TV show is actually called Kengan Ashura, and right now you can actually watch the full 2 parts on Netflix. And it is literally another fan favorite that is streaming. Part 3 will actually be released until mid-2021. I know, unfortunately, there's a long wait. We're still in 2020 in November, but hopefully it's kind of like maybe in the summer. And I have, of course, some favorite characters. Kirei family and Oma Tokita and Imai. So I'm just going to talk to you guys a little bit about the characters and the plot, because a lot of them have different backstories. And it was originally released July 2019 for season 1, or if you want to call it part 1, because that's what they call it. They don't really go by seasons. But the second part was just released October 2019. So this was last year. But it's crazy because like I didn't even see the anime on Netflix, even though it came out back in 2019. But of course, due to the pandemic, there hasn't been any new updates right now on Netflix. But of course, you can actually watch this show on Funimation and other anime sites that you probably know about beforehand. And of course, if you're not too sure about that, I would just stick to Netflix. Hopefully, because of the way it was released in July of 2019, when it first came out, it probably will be the same thing for 2021. So hopefully, it's not a long wait. Because the way it just ended for part 2, oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. And if you read the manga, of course, then you know ahead of time. Of course, I'm not going to leak it here. You know ahead of time of these different things that happen. And of course, there's a lot of twists. So I'm just going to say this. If people, like certain characters on the show, were not friends now, they may be friends in the future, especially when they first started out or if they first started fighting each other. It's very interesting because it basically is about in Japan. Now, there's these big organizations just many, many years ago. And what they do is if they have to settle on something like a business agreement, or if they want to be the head of the Kenyan associations, it's literally businessmen and it's all about business. But what they do is sometimes if they can't come to some type of agreement, or if they want to make things a little more violent and bloody, they each have a fighter for each of these organizations that are under the Kenyan Association. And of course, you had the head of that, who's kind of in charge of the businesses and probably the richest among them. But they are their network alone for each of the businesses could be millions and billions and trillions of dollars. And a lot of them that's part of these organizations, they have, of course, other businesses, or they'll buy a business from somebody else, or they'll just be under another business altogether. But the crazy backstories of a lot of these fighters, some of them just want to fight to kill, some of them just want to fight to have justice. There's a lot of different participants of many different backgrounds, and some of them fight because they have no choice, because of threats, or because of family involvement. And a lot of them, like the Kirei family, and they have been fighting for generation. They're like a different type of species. They're superhuman, a different type of human race. And they can tap into this certain type of power where it's surpassing human capability, which is very interesting. And of course, if you ever watch the show, there are a lot of parts where if you literally have a soft spot, if you have a soft stomach, then you probably would not want to watch the show. But it's interesting because every episode that I've watched, so the way I did it was I started with part 1, and I think I watched the first couple episodes, and I kind of got distracted and didn't go back watching it. But I recently, a few days ago, just finished finally both seasons or parts, and as I'm going through the show, I start seeing a pattern, right? So the really, really important ones that have certain fighting techniques, there's this one for Omo Takito, right? He learned this from his master, who, unfortunately is not really around anymore. I'm not going to go into details, but it's called the Nico style. And then there's other forms of fighting where people kind of tap into a different type of power, or they made their own type of style, or somehow their masters were connected, or they mixed different types of martial arts together, or they're MMA fighters, or they're pro wrestlers, or they're boxers. Like, there's so many different things. Some of these men turned themselves literally into not only superhuman, but they lost their humanity along the way because they hurt or killed so many people, and they won so many matches. For leader, or if you want to say the king of the Kenyan Association, he is called Metsudo, and he has a fighter called Fang, and Fang is known as like literally the strongest of the strongest. And there are a few of them that are like that, but Fang, he literally doesn't lose at all. He's been doing it for so many years, and he will kill you on the spot. But what I like is when they're fighting in the arena, the techniques, of course, they also have announcers like when they're fighting, and anyone that's part of the organization, anyone that has their own business or has a fighter fighting, or just anyone that doesn't have a fighter anymore, everyone still is there and has to watch. And they kind of go to like this island, like a little bit away from Tokyo, to compete. And right now, the one competition that is happening, the one tournament, is to who's going to be the new leader for the Kenyan Association. Who's going to be the king of us all. So it's very interesting to see a lot of backstabbing among the business. Like, they do not play. They take it very, very seriously. And I didn't think I would actually like the show because of the violence, but I actually like learning about the different type of ways where you literally could hurt someone so easily. Like, a lot of these fighters would literally just be standing there, and just because of how strong their neck is, like just literally brute strength, they can flip you back, or they can push you against the wall. And then there's others like Imai who have these techniques where he calls himself, for example, the king of stranglers. Okay. And again, if you're uncomfortable with conversations like this, then I'm trying to make it not like that, not biased to it. But it's not to the point where it's like, oh my gosh, like watching this is so violent and I'm going to be a serial killer now. No, it's more like I'm kind of learning ways where I can defend myself. And I kind of want to learn, like, if this is like a real technique, who's teaching this in our world today? And there's a lot of things that can literally save your life. Now, the females, there's a few female Yamashita's organization, which is what Omo Tokita works for, but he's also under somebody else. And they kind of have like a female, like, secretary / coach type of thing. But I realized there's not really any female fighters. But when we come to the Curry family, they have one female in particular who is the granddaughter. And of course, she has like brothers and uncles and whatnot. And they're all related because of their bloodline. But they're all trained assassins that have not been conquered over the years. They had like maybe 4 losses from 4 different people in the Curry family that has ever lost throughout the history since the beginning. Because that's how far back their bloodline goes. And it just keeps going generation after generation. They don't just marry anybody, date anybody. It literally has to be part of the bloodline that they put in you or you're born with. Okay, it's literally a purity thing with them, which is pretty cool because they're a really badass family. Okay, but she has, of course, kind of a crush on Omo Tokita, and I thought it was pretty funny because Omo Tokita, his background is very interesting. His origins are kind of like unknown throughout the entire tournament. But of course, we, as the audience, get a little bit of a backstory from him, of his master, of him trying to progress for Nico style, him trying to be stronger and stronger. We start to see that even though he talks about killing, and even though he talks about being the strongest and being the greatest fighter, you see a lot of that pattern from a lot of the fighters on the show. And he, however, he kind of, if he has the right motivation, he will win. And he's one of those people where it's not really he's the underdog, because when they first showcased like the first episode, and Yamashita was actually like in a nearby alley, and he was trying to beat up this one guy. And this one guy, I think he was a pro wrestler. So Yamashita, looking from the corner, didn't think like, hey, like this small fry can't do anything. Like, look how big and bulk and built he is, right? But Omo Tokita has a way of surprising everyone. Because of his style of fighting, he uses that against you. And that's what's interesting. And then he has a few tricks, of course, up his sleeve, like every fighter does. And that's what keeps the show more and more entertaining. It gets so addicting where there's one episode with the fighter Imai. He's pretty young. And they talk a little bit about his backstory too, because he's a good kid, but he just loves the idea of fighting. He loves the idea of winning. And I actually thought in this one episode that he was actually a goner because of who he was up against. But he, again, surprises. He still found some way to win. Even though, and I'm going to say this, he kind of went, like, some of the fighters take it too far, where they actually torture you. Okay? So that's why I said it becomes very grimming and very engrossing and exciting at the same time, but at the same time, it's like bloody and violent. So if any of you maybe watched the show Baki, for example, which is also streaming on Netflix, and I could do another episode on that very soon, but it has those type of styles of fighting, but they're very different. And when I say styles, like, these are brute fighters who will literally go the extra mile to literally kill you or to literally prove that they're the strongest. And it's just because of the fact that they love fighting. That's it. There's nothing else to it. And they've been doing it from since young. A lot of them came out of jail just to be part of these different tournaments. That's just a little bit about Kengan Ashura. And the show was actually created by Shogakukan, and the creator was Yabako Sanjovic. So he was the creator of the show, and like a date for it is going to be mid-2021. But as for right now, you can watch it on Netflix. I highly recommend it if you're into anime and you're into action and adventure and a lot of violent, bloody anime. Like, and it kind of reminds me of a kind of dark anime as well. So, as you know, I did do a recent podcast earlier in the year, was about Tokyo Ghoul. And as you see, they had many, like, a lot of bloody and crazy fight and torture scenes. So, but this one, they're going like the extra mile, because majority of the show, like every episode was a fight. This fight, this fight, this fight, this fight between two different men. However, in my opinion, overall, I do like the show. I do want to see women fighting. I think it'll be very interesting if they were to create it that way. I didn't read the manga, so I'm not sure if they did. They probably didn't because of the characters, but it would be interesting to see. So just a suggestion. So coming up after the break, I have some unfortunate news about recent beloved Jeopardy host Alex Trebek, and I will get into that after the break. Don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss it.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back after the break, everyone. So thank you again so much for listening to today's episode. Again, I just want to say we have some unfortunate news about Alex Trebek, of course, the host of Jeopardy. If you didn't know that, I don't know, where have you been for the last, 30 years or so? We just finished discussing about Kengan Ashura. It's a TV show that you can actually watch. It's an anime, a Japanese TV anime that you can watch on Netflix right now, and has the first 2 parts. So right now I want to get into Alex Trebek, who unfortunately earlier this month, he has actually passed away from pancreatic cancer, which is a very terrible disease. I know someone in particular that has actually died from that disease as well, because it is something that does sneak up on you. So he actually has a few last recordings that, of course, he did before he passed away, and they're all being released, of course, week by week, day by day. Which is pretty cool, the last episode is rumored to air on Christmas Day, which I think is very sad and unfortunate. So my heart goes out to his family and his loved ones. But of course, they are honoring him on the show. And one of the episodes that he did that they aired since he passed, he actually paid a tribute to the disease. And he actually died November 8th. He is literally, in my opinion, one of the best TV show hosts of all time. I can't remember turning on the TV at I believe it was 7 o'clock. He would come on, especially if you grew up with cable television, which most of America did, you would see him, and it was a very educational show, right? And I remember I would put that on, but of course they were already talking about who the top 7 people would be to actually replace him. Me personally, I feel like they should end the show, because him doing it for so many years, it's going to be completely weird and awkward to have someone else do the show. And it's a really good educational show, because you actually do learn a lot when it comes to the different categories and different topics. And the show actually is a game changer for even how teachers teach students in their class, or if you wanted to play a game with a friend. Because if you liked Family Feud, then most likely you would have liked as well Jeopardy. And I don't know if it's because my grandfather, he actually used to watch this all the time. So that's kind of how I was like put on to the TV show from even as a young child. Of course, I haven't watched the show really in years unless I'm with an elder person, because most of the time when that show comes on, that is usually the time frame for when someone who is elderly would actually watch the TV show 7 o'clock, probably before they go to bed. Okay, and I know this because of my grandfather. I know this because of my grandmother, who watched the show. But then when I sat there and watched the show, like, you know, as a kid, you're like, okay, well, this is not a cartoon. This is not a movie. This is not a TV show that I want to watch. But watching the show at a young age was very interesting, and I thought it does a lot to your brain. And I think it's a good show if you don't have your kids watching it now. I feel like that would educate them, because it's things that they kind of learn about school, but there's certain facts that they do, which is very interesting, because there's always 3 contestants. It was pretty diverse as far as I can remember, and it wasn't biased or anything like that. And then on top of that, just being smart and knowing this knowledge is really good, right? Like, we should always want to learn. And then you're doing it for money. I mean, come on. Maybe I might do another episode for you all that's specifically on game shows. I love game shows. I mean, there's so many of them, right? Oh, like I said, the final airing of the last episode that he did will be held on Christmas Day. And there's some statistics I want to just warn all of you about when it comes to pancreatic cancer. And if you haven't known this before, pancreatic cancer is actually for the month of November to represent, and you can wear purple. So statistically, more than 90% of patients die within 5 years of learning that they have pancreatic cancer. So if you feel any of the symptoms, especially like stomach pains, Alex Trebek actually said before he passed away, and it was a few of his last words, not specifically on the day he died, but some of the things that he mentioned to get people more aware of pancreatic cancer. He had stomach pains for so many years, right? And he always thought that, it was like nothing. He kept ignoring it. So finally, when he went to the doctor, it was one of the symptoms for pancreatic cancer. So right now they have some contenders for a new host for the TV show, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but I want to talk a little bit more about the facts about the show. So the show also posted a quote from the late TV show's host's wife. Her name is Jean Trebek. She looked a lot younger than him as well. But she did say in a post that it's about time we stop taking for granted the preciousness of each day and start living in the full experience of kindness and coherency. So that was a post that she put on Twitter, and she also stated that her husband is her hero. So just some facts for you all. The show actually first aired in 1984. Again, it is a game show, and it has about 37 seasons. And I actually just learned you can actually watch this TV show on Netflix and Hulu. But yes, if you did want to watch the show from the beginning and kind of educate yourself, you can, or if you can just watch the recent episodes. But it's literally one of those classic game shows, has a certain twist with it. As you all know, if you ever played this in school or anything like that, you get the answers first, and the contestants have to kind of like answer back with a question. And then you get like this beeping sound if you get the question wrong, and it'd be like, and you get to pick the topic, and you're like, okay, well, can I get history for 200? So that's kind of how it goes, and you kind of keep going up and up. You're taking a risk every time when the money goes up, so it could be like 300, 400, 1,000. Okay, so the 3 contestants, including the previous show champion, it compete in like 6 different categories and has 3 different rounds. And each round, as I stated before, the answers, you get a certain amount of prize money in the end. And a lot of contestants have actually been on this show more than once, just because, like I said, of how smart and educated they are, and a common sense that they have, and just having that experience being on the show before. So there's certain champions that we have for this show, and they kind of made history on the show as well. And then Final Jeopardy, the contestants have to come up with their own jackpot, and it has as long as it's within the amount of money they've already earned. So if a player actually finishes the second round with $0, they are eliminated from the Final Jeopardy. The first version, actually, of Jeopardy, which aired from 1964 to 1975 on NBC, it was actually hosted by Art Fleming. Then Alex Trebek, he began the program in 1984, and at the start of his syndicated run, and he also hosted it until his death in 2020. But other associated networks are the American Broadcasting Company and, like I said, NBC. So it actually was a different version, and I also didn't know that when I did my research on the show, because everyone knows Jeopardy and you automatically will connect that to Alex. So some of the writers for the show are Merv Griffin, Harry Friedman, Mark Gaberman, Debbie Griffin, Billy Wiss, Michelle Loud, Jim Ryan, and we also have a few others. We have Matthew Caruso, Terrence McDonald, we have Ryan Hopak, we have Steve D. Tamarius, we have Michelle Silverman, Stephen Dorfman, Gary Johnson, Kathy Easterling, Andrew Price. Breaking is even before he passed away, I believe it was sometime earlier this year, with everything going on with the pandemic, I remember seeing an article actually that he found out that he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So that all literally happened this year from what I remember. So I feel like it's heartbreaking, right? That, you know, when you find out that news, and if you ever, again, my heart goes out to you, if you ever experience someone that has died from this or heard of someone that has died from this, you kind of have an idea of that. When that article came out and when that information came out that he had pancreatic cancer, that was it. Unfortunately, it was kind of like a waiting game, right? Because he was already at stage 4. So it's really heartbreaking. And there was a few other people, actually, I believe in politics, and a recent judge that actually recently died from pancreatic cancer. And again, more and more people, activists, are trying to get the word out there that this is actually a very, very serious disease that must be taken seriously. So if you're feeling any of these symptoms, definitely get checked out, because there's no way to really cure this type of cancer. You're really taking a chance with your life, right? In total, Alex Trebek has been doing this TV show for 36 years, and he actually holds the record for the most episodes of a game show hosted ever. And his salary alone was $10 million a year. Can you believe it? And some winners from the show are, winners of the TV show I will now list is actually Colby Burnett, season 29, Brad Rutter, season 30, Ben Ingram, season 31, and Roger Craig for season 28. And all men, by the way, which is kind of a stereotype, but however, I'll also talk about some of his family. And there's actually a gap between Alex Trebek and his wife Jean. Jean is actually Alex Trebek's second wife. He did actually have first wife, actually named Elaine Trebek, and they were together from 1974 to 1980. And Alex and Elaine never had any children, but Trebek actually adopted Elaine's daughter Nikki after they wed. So she, of course, had a daughter from a previous marriage. And right now with Jean, Alex has a daughter named Emily Trebek, and then he has a son named Matthew Trebek. Emily is currently 27 and Matthew is 30. But there is a huge age gap difference between Alex and Jean. And they first met when they were at a party in 1988, and Trebek later invited Jean actually to his home for dinner. And then Jean, she was a businesswoman. She also worked in real estate, as project manager. She is from Huntington, New York. And the age difference, first of all, they've been together for over 20 years, okay? And this is one of those situations, like the song from Aaliyah, Age Ain't Nothing But a Number. But Alex Trebek was actually born July 22nd in 1940. He was actually 79 years old. And Jean Trebek was born in 1963. Yeah, huge age difference. And she is currently only 56. So, in short, the two both, there's a big 23-year age difference. So, again, they proved that even though they are and became famous, and Alex Trebek is, you know, kind of like a Hollywood type of star for being one of the most famous game TV show hosts, that their marriage actually did work out. And it was actually confirmed as well that Alex wished that he actually met Jean like about 29 years earlier, you know, again, because of the huge age difference and because it didn't work out so well with his first wife. So that's a little about the show. Again, my heart goes out to the family. Rest in peace. Again, if you love Jeopardy, highly recommend that you go ahead and watch it on Netflix and Hulu now. All the seasons. There's a lot to catch up on, right? And even if you're interested as well of watching the first version, I think I would like to, in my opinion, I think it would be interesting to actually compare how the first gentleman that has done the show before Alex Trebek, and then see how Alex Trebek did it. But after a while, I mean, after doing that for 36 years, I mean, it does get personal because that's your job, but it's also like a second home, you know? Everyone knows, and he's connected so strongly because he's done it for so long to this TV show. So it's very unfortunate that he passed away this way for pancreatic cancer. So rest in peace, Alex Trebek. And again, you can watch it on Netflix and Hulu. And that we're coming to a close of our episode tonight. So again, I want to thank you all for listening to the GSMC television podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network Group. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That always helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts podcast network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts podcast network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.